Good morning. It's Monday morning and all's quiet on Lyle Island. There is no barge yet on its way with Indians and the environmentalists to attempt to block the legal logging which should take place on that island very shortly. And I sincerely trust that as Premier Bennett is basking in the reflection of his very successful convention, he realizes that sweet phrases are not enough. We all hope that he's right when he says that we have reached the bottom in the fallout in our resource industries, be it lumber or be it coal or be it pulp or be it mines in general. And we all hope that he's right when he says the economy is taking a turn for the better. And we all hope when he says that he has finished the bloodletting in the public sector and that he can give us some real economic growth. I hope, however, that he realizes he can't sit on his hands and ignore what is likely to happen on Lyle Island, and that he'd better tell the feds that the Moresby Park, magnificent though it can be, with 450 square miles of primeval forest, that we must have TFL 24 to keep the pulp mills and sawmills going in Port Alice and Squamish and on the Lower Mainland. But you know, a thought crosses my head this morning. There is some considerable speculation that with all the new $5, $6, $7, $8 an hour jobs coming up for the opening of Expo next year, that Mr. Bennett, if the polls tell him so, might go for an election just after Expo opens. But think of the irony if his polls were to be wrong and he gets defeated in a spring election next year. And Skelly stepped in to become the master of ceremonies for our magnificent Expo despite the projected deficit. So that makes me to think, don't worry too much about the prospects of a provincial election next year. Talking of politics, guess who came out of, I was going to say the woodwork, but that wouldn't be nice, the backwoods today, but the man who was fired twice by two different prime ministers in 3 months, Eugene Whelan. Whatever became of Whelan, he's here this morning to dispense his magnificent wisdom and his magnificently repulsive green Stetson. Now, also on the program this morning, I have a bit of a mystery man who I'm sure is a secret agent of the tobacco companies. His name is Stephen Eyres, and he's director of an organization whose acronym says FOREST, Freedom Organization for the Right to Enjoy Smoking Tobacco. I don't know. It's probably as phony as a $3 bill, but we'll talk to him later. And then I have a delicate, magnificent, true story of a woman, and this will bring the Second World War back to many people and will tell a lot of people who don't know what happened in Europe during the war of just how horrible the Nazis were and how there were brave people who did oppose them actively and occasionally violently. This is a Jewish woman's secret war inside the Gestapo, and I have in the studio Helene Moszkiewiez. But first, the man in the green Stetson after the break. Eugene Whelan, former Minister of Agriculture, former contender, disastrous contender for the leadership of the Liberal Party. How much did that cost you out your own pocket when you lost that leadership, the one that Turner won?
Nothing. The contributors even, it might surprise you, but they even come right from the city of Vancouver, and spontaneous contributors. I never owed anybody any money when we finished that. I didn't spend much either, mind you, too.
Tell me of how you are the only man in Canadian political history to have been fired twice by two prime ministers in 3 months.
I was fired first by Mr. Turner. He said he had too big of a cabinet, and there was 3 of us from Windsor area, and one of us had to go. And then actually 2 of us had to go.
That was when John Turner took over as pro-tem Prime Minister after Pierre walked away.
Yes.
So he called you in and he said to you?
He said, Big Gene, we have too many cabinet ministers and we have to cut down. I'm going to have to let you go. So that was a little bit rough to take, you know, after you had worked so hard both provincially and federally for the party for so long. But it wasn't unexpected because you were talking about my campaign. My campaign wasn't in a total, how do you say, futility. because if you read the things I got across, and I was the only one who really talked about the resources, the forest industry, the fishing industry, and the agriculture industry. And if you take care of those three primary resources, you know, you have enough employment for about 70% of the economy of Canada and the people involved, too.
But he fired you.
He fired me, and then I was appointed ambassador to FAO, which some of them said at that time, what is the World Food and Agriculture Organization? What does it do in it? And I knew what it was supposed to be doing. I knew what it wasn't doing, and I knew that the government wanted somebody there to go to, how do you say, pound their heads together and straighten them out, because we had made a report, I don't say we had made a report in '83 about the conditions in Africa. And Jack, it was so accurate, it makes you so sad today to see that it wasn't followed up in a better fashion. So my job was to go to FAO and to do some work there, not just to get a luxurious ambassador.
How much was that patronage plum, said he, choosing his words wickedly, how much was that patronage plum to pay you?
About the same as I would get as an MP, you know, and if you work hard at it, you earn it. If you don't do anything, you don't earn it.
About 70,000 a year.
That's 75,000.
75,000 a year.
Yes, that's right.
And here you were, so Turner fired you, but said, John, because you're a good and faithful servant and an expert, I'm going to make you ambassador to Rome to the Food and Agricultural Organization. And then what happened?
And then came along the election of September the 4th, and I received a call in my old office, waiting for a meeting with the new Minister of Agriculture at my old desk, telling me that my position had been severed because of economic reasons.
Just a phone call?
A phone call, that's right.
From a civil servant?
No, from a minister.
Which minister?
Joe.
Joe Clark?
Little Joe, yeah.
Little Joe?
Yeah.
He's more than 6 feet tall.
but he doesn't weigh very much, so you go.
So he's Little Joe?
Yeah.
So Joe fired you?
That's right. Joe had to do the job. It wasn't, I don't think it was his...
Mind you, you expected
he was the hitman, I guess you would call it.
You expected to be fired?
It wasn't unexpected. I said if they didn't want me there, I wasn't going to go. If you remember, I could have went in August in that part when it was a controversy, and I said I didn't want to be an ambassador if they didn't want me to be there. But I know I could have did a good job.
Difficult, though, after a life of such prominence and influence as you have, to be kicked about by prime ministers and Joe Clarks and other prime ministers.
Well, it's rough, you know, and the media and even some of your political friends that weren't that kind to you in your own party, that makes it even rougher.
No, but you're well set. You've got this magnificent index pension as, I mean, you people look after your own. How much is your pension as an MP? My pension
as an MP, and mind you, it's only because you contributed the maximum, and I did that all the time. You know, your pension, it's about $49,700 a year. So
indexed?
Yeah.
Is it indexed the cost of COL?
I think it's, I don't even know what the indexation is on it, Jack. I never paid that much attention to it, so they...
Okay, and Canagrex was your scheme to kind of nationalize agriculture, and people seem to hate you across the country for that, you and your marketing boards.
But this is, yeah, this is what a lot of people used. They said it was to nationalize. It was to assist the private sector in marketing, because most countries that you deal with today, they have some kind of an overall government body that they deal with, because there isn't very many countries that are democratic, how do you say, run in a democratic fashion like ours is. So you deal with a government body, so if you have nothing similar to deal with them. But ours was to be a facilitator, not to nationalize agriculture. We couldn't even own property in Canada. You couldn't, and you could only be involved in the export world. You could not be involved in the domestic functions of agriculture production or processing at all here in Canada.
What are you doing in town?
I came out here for several functions. I was at Simon Fraser University, and I attended a liberal function, and I went fishing yesterday.
Catch anything?
And I'm seeing some other people. No, but the salmon were jumping right around the boat. I think we were fishing wrong. We should have been trolling, and we were deep fishing. So
now, what are you doing now? You've got a new company going. What is it?
We have just started a new company called Agriculture International Development Associates of Canada. And that's to work with the developing world. And it's a little bit different, Jack, than a lot of companies. So a lot of companies do give money, but ours has a clause in it that if we do make money, 10% of our profits have to go for education in the developing world.
In one or two well-chosen Whelan-esque phrases, and as a partisan liberal, you're still a liberal, right?
Yes.
What do you think of Mulroney's credibility? The Prime Minister is Mulroney, by the way, for the benefit of the audience, and they have forgotten him already, because the polls are way down and the Libs are coming back up.
Well, I think that in his credibility and probably with his members, it would be the most difficult thing for him to face, because you don't do what he did or what they're doing to his members and say, you must have forgot what you said, didn't you? And then he says, yes, I did forget what I said, or did forget where I was, etc. The credibility of that member, but the one sitting next to him or across from him or along someplace in that same caucus is going to say, is it going to be me next? You know, I was long enough there, and that's one of the worst things can happen to a member, prime minister or a member, to lose his credibility with his own constituency, whether it's the nation or his own riding that he represents.
Mind you, with 211 members, he can ride out anything for the next 8 years, can't he?
Yes, unless he has a revolt within his own party. And don't forget, he hasn't that many people in many instances that were long-time conservatives. Some of them were instant conservatives. They went from the Liberal Party and went from other parties to him. So he's not on that secure footing that he can guarantee that he's going to live out anything. It can be like a tornado or a hurricane. You know, it all depends on which direction that wind blows and how strong it blows.
Well, we don't have to feel sorry for Eugene Whelan, do we?
No, Eugene Whelan always looked after himself. He's been working for himself ever since he was 16 years of age and working for other people and enjoying it, and still will continue to do that.
Can I try your hat on once again?
Okay.
This is our line. Pinhead.
You're a fathead.
My thanks to Eugene Whelan. That was a rehearsed line from a show we did 5 years ago. Next I'm going to talk to this front man for the cancer-causing tobacco industry after the break. Stephen Eyres is director of this odd organization called Forest, Freedom Organization for the Right to Enjoy Smoking Tobacco, and he has flown in from London. Stephen, are you a put-on? Are you a come-on? Are you a gimmick, or are you just a sheer shameless front for Imperial Tobacco and Rothmans and the rest of these dreadful people?
Nothing odd about defending freedom of choice and representing the views of the majority of people. 8 out of 10 non-smokers, 9 out of 10 smokers believe a person should be left to make up his own mind about smoking.
I don't mind that, freedom of choice, certainly, but you're surely not going to attempt to tell me this morning that smoking is anything but a dirty, unhealthy habit.
Fair point. Equally fair for me to tell you that there are people like Dr. Christian Barnard, who knows something about medicine, who said recently that the medical profession are going around issuing too many thou shalt nots. And in a free society, Jack, it's up to the individual adult to decide how he lives his life and how he spends his money. And if 7 million Canadians want to smoke tobacco, frankly, if Canada's going to remain a free country, they should have to exercise that right instead of having to listen to all these campaigns which are trying to turn smokers into a breed of social lepers.
Lepers, almost as bad as AIDS victims might become.
Oh yes, I think there are many things which the medical profession should be doing, such as spending public money to find a cause for AIDS and to help people who've got AIDS. Much better to do that than to spend public money trying to make smokers feel guilty about their habits.
But there is a point. You said that as free people we should not be dragooned by the government into not doing this or not doing that. I would campaign to the death against the sale across the counter of heroin.
Agreed. And I'm defending...
And therefore I would stop that, wouldn't I?
I'm defending the consumption of a legal product. It's somebody else's campaign, not mine, which is trying to turn illegal products into legal products. 7 million people enjoy smoking tobacco in Canada. For many people, they see positive benefits and enjoyments from smoking. For example, it helps many people relax. It helps people deal with stress. If we're going to remain a free country, then it's up to the individual to decide, and not to have his choice moulded by the state or by all these busybody organisations who think they've got a right to impose a non-smoking lifestyle on the rest of the community.
Providing I'm not infecting other people with the deleterious effects. There are studies, I'm told, that second-hand smoke can cause cancer.
Jack, there's a word to describe those arguments. I can't use it on this programme, but it begins with bull. There are many people in the medical profession, the American Health Foundation, for example, who've challenged the passive smoking arguments and have said that the existing evidence is marginal and inadequate. Inadequate for what? Inadequate for using state power to take the freedom of choice away from 7 million people who enjoy smoking tobacco. Of course, let's have separate smoking and non-smoking areas in public places so that both groups of people can carry on and enjoy themselves without getting into each other's hair. But don't ban it completely.
We've We've recently had arbitrary decisions by big public corporations. I believe the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia is one, where all smoking is banned in the offices.
That's their decision, but I would warn them that, in fact, there have been some studies now, since you're talking about studies, which show that smokers tend to be more productive than non-smokers. There was a study in Minnesota by an anti-smoking campaign who measured the relative productivities of smoking and non-smoking executives in a bank. And much to the anger of the study chief, he found the smokers were 3% more productive.
I would imagine they're probably 30% more productive. It's quite obvious to me that smokers are nicer people, and except for blowing smoke in people's face, more considerate, more equable, not so uptight, more tolerant, and probably more decent overall.
And back home, half of our nurses are smokers, and nursing is a stressful
but you
profession.
British are crazy. I mean,
Sure.
Everybody in Britain smokes, don't they? In fact, they smoke right down to the very end of the cigarette, holding it like this. Remember that
Sure.
British habit?
Sure, but for many people, they do discern positive benefits in terms of dealing with stress, in terms of relaxation, and it's up to them to decide.
Cigarette smoke may be what holds me together in one reasonably competent piece for the moment.
I noticed you smoking before the show went out on the air. Thank you.
Everybody knows I smoke anyway, but at least I don't try to make a bad example by sitting and puffing and blowing smoke in your face.
I think most smokers like that too. If they know smoking is going to upset people around them, they will gladly refrain.
And I know women who've lost dates and love affairs because men have said kissing you is like licking a dirty ashtray.
But I don't think things like good manners and morality can be imposed from above by government or
Serious
by
question.
these nagging organisations.
You'd fly across the world, you're well informed and obviously by the cut of your jib, well paid.
I wish I were.
Who pays your money?
My organisation is backed by 30,000 people in Britain, mainly smokers as you would expect, who we've been told have got to work to stay free, to retain their freedom. We also go fundraising to each of the 5 tobacco companies and to tell them it's high time that they backed a campaign to defend freedom of choice. We're not funded by the taxpayer like the anti-smoking organisations.
But you do get the bulk of your money from the tobacco companies.
Oh yes, I'd be wasting my time if I went fundraising to, say, Kellogg's All-Brand, wouldn't I?
You would, good. And the tobacco companies aren't ashamed to admit that they give you money.
Oh, they've had to be talked into it, but at last they're beginning to stand their ground and to join the debate about smoking.
Have you ever smoked?
I smoked 1 or 2, yes, when I was much younger, but for me, I don't get any pleasures myself, but it's all right. I do enjoy drinking alcohol. I do like putting salt on my dinner. I do like fatty foods and cream, all the things that the professional health naggers tell me I shouldn't be doing.
Let's start a new day, the National Busybodies Week. Was that your idea?
We had a National Don't Smoke Day, a day of scare tactics and bullying, and we put it into context. So we had a National Busybodies Week. Monday was Don't Drink Alcohol Day. Tuesday was Don't Put Salt on Your Dinner Day. Wednesday was Don't Smoke Day, and we had a Don't Watch Boxing Day, a Don't Take the Dog for a Walk Day. Eventually we had Sunday, the day of rest, a day to mind your own business and choose how you live your life.
Phone calls to Stephen Eyres. I don't know. Yeah, phone calls to Stephen Eyres, director of Forest, Freedom Organisation for the Right to Enjoy Smoking Tobacco. Now. You are a professional lobbyist, am I correct, Stephen Eyres?
I'm a professional advocate of the rights of the individual, certainly. And in the smoking debate, there's been a very aggressive and articulate anti-smoking campaign. Nobody's been putting the other side until we came along.
You were telling me about another campaign in which you were involved, which intrigued me very much indeed.
Before I started defending the rights of smokers, I ran a campaign to defend the rights of workers to join, or equally not to join, trade unions. We have a thing in Britain called the closed shop. You have to belong to a union to retain your job. And we had 3 workers who were dismissed from the railway company because they refused to join a union. We took their case to the European Court of Human Rights, and it ruled in our favour that the individual has a right to decide for himself whether or not he becomes a union member. That paved the way for Margaret Thatcher's new trade union laws.
And is the closed shop, I should know this, but I don't, now effectively banned in Britain?
It's made much more difficult to enforce, certainly. And I don't want to see a closed shop for smokers either in Britain or in Canada.
Go ahead to Stephen Eyres.
Well, yes, I'm a smoker. As a matter of fact, I'm enjoying my cigarette at the moment. There's no doubt about it that smoking costs you know, billions of dollars in health care, et cetera, et cetera. I think that smokers should be weaned from smoking, and I think that there should be places for smokers to smoke, but I think we should have a new drug. I mean, this drug costs a lot of money, and there's no doubt in my mind children should not be smoking, children should not be drinking. So I think the tobacco industry should spend millions and billions of dollars trying to find some new drug that is safer for us, okay? That's my opinion, thanks.
I agree very much with the point of view about children, but I want to treat adults as adults. Smokers generate in Canada something like $3 billion in taxes, which pays for all sorts of things, such as pensions, such as our defence costs and so on. The argument that smokers are costing society a lot of money really is a lot of nonsense. Smokers pay their way 3 times over.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning. I wanted to tell Mr. Eyres I would love to join his organization. And like the German saying, half of us will die of smoking or drinking too much, and the other half will die anyway.
Yeah, Christian Barnard put the nail on the head. He said that it's essentially that the quality of a person's life is as important as its physical length. And if people spend a miserable long life, then I don't think that's really a goal worth supporting. It's up to the individual to decide, and if you get positive enjoyments and pleasures out of your habit, frankly, that's up to you to decide.
Half of us will die from the effects of smoking and drinking, and the other half of us will die anyway.
And half of the world shouldn't try and tell the other half how to live. And like he just said, if everything is done moderately, I think it's good for you.
Thank you, ma'am. All things in moderation. Keyword of my entire existence. Go ahead, please.
Morning, Jack, and your guest. I've been a smoker for quite a number of years, and I finally quit because of all the harassment from the public. And I had done that for about a year, and I put on 50 pounds. I was a nervous wreck. All I did was eat, nervous tics. Then I ended up, I had a medical. My doctor said, my goodness, you got to get rid of that weight. That's bad. Go back to smoking.
Yes.
Moderately, I smoke in my home, and I lost my weight, and I feel like a normal human being now instead of having tranquilizers and sleeping pills and all that rubbish junk food.
Thank you.
Yes, if you smoke and then switch to other kind of social props, such as alcohol, or switch to tranquilizers, you're probably going to be much worse off than if you stayed with smoking in the first place. The important thing is that it's up to you to decide how you live your life, and these busybodies have got no right to interfere.
Are we going to flog memberships for you?
They can certainly hear more about our campaign, certainly by contacting us.
Jolly good show. Go ahead from, where am I? Smithers.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Webster and Mr. Eyres.
Yes.
I just want to compliment Mr. Eyres and also yourself on the smoking. I'm a smoker, and I just don't like all the busybodies. I try to stay out of the non-smokers' way, and I just wish somebody would leave us alone and quit getting on our back about blowing smoke in our faces and stuff. Just want to compliment you.
Have you noticed that women are generally ruder than men when it comes to tackling smokers?
Maybe we are, but I'm not.
No, but I'm talking non-smoking women are always ruder than men.
Definitely, absolutely.
I think it's the nature of the species.
Yeah, like you said, we're all going to die eventually anyways. Let's enjoy it while we can.
This organization was actually formed as a result of one very patronizing lady going up to my chairman and telling him to take the pipe out of his mouth because he was damaging her health and his, and he was doing it in the open air. So he said it's high time somebody started answering these busybodies and working to help smokers break free.
Go ahead from Terrace, BC.
Good morning, Mr. Eyres. I like your organization, and I think there should be a Canadian organization of the same sort.
There is one, isn't there?
There isn't at the moment, and I certainly don't want to impose an organization on Canadians. I think it's very much up to the individual Canadian to get together and start working to put the side of freedom of choice.
Is this the start of your cross-country trip or the end?
This is halfway through. We did a similar tour in Australia, in fact, last year, and we went to see a number of people who are sick and tired of being told that they may not smoke by the busybodies, and as a result of it, there is now a pro-smokers' rights campaign in the state of Victoria. Certainly, if people want to start campaigning here in BC, good luck to you.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'd just like to make a couple of comments on, first of all, the freedom of choice thing. I was a smoker and now I'm a non-smoker. And I've always gone through life with the philosophy that I have as much freedom as if I can turn around in a circle with my arms extended and I don't hit anybody, then that's okay. And I think that the smokers have to be concerned that, yes, maybe their smoke is damaging other people's health. And I think that the people's health has the priority over the smokers' freedom to smoke wherever they please. And on your studies regarding smokers being more productive, well, I think that's a lot of bull, ... because I've been an employer for many years in the restaurant business, and in the past years have been tending to hire non-smokers because, first of all, they are more energetic, they're more productive, they have a much healthier outlook on life, and they're not sitting around looking at the clock for when's the next time they can go on a coffee break to have their fag, because they're generally governed and ruled, and they have a noose around their neck by the cigarettes. So I think that, your studies are questionable as far as their results are.
Yes, I'll tell you what would happen if you banned smoking in the workplace. All it would do is cause a change in the incidence of smoking from the desk, from the workroom to the restroom, and there'll be even more productivity losses as a result of that. You have to recognize that for some people, obviously not for yourself, but there are people for whom smoking does help them to relax, it does help them to concentrate and to meet deadlines. So much better to recognize that and enable people to smoke with consideration and courtesy towards other people rather than try and ban it altogether.
But I think she wins that round. She was very evocative. Good for you, even if you are a nag.
I'm not an egg.
Oh, you are a nag.
I just stopped being suicidal.
Okay, love. She's a nag. Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's about time that someone stood up for us. I thank you, Mr. Eyres, from the bottom of our hearts. I'd also like to say that maybe a lot of these non-smokers who have their rights, which we are supposed to have too, are, why don't they start lobbying their campaign about the other deadliest thing that's going around, which is ruddy alcohol, especially in the children. Now, they're trying to, make it so that children don't smoke. That's wonderful, I agree. But why aren't they hitting them with the alcoholism? I see the kids walking and up and down the streets with booze in their hand. I would rather see them walk with a cigarette than walk with a can of beer, or know that your husband is out. Who wants to kiss somebody that smells like the brewery, for that matter, on a woman's point of view?
Disgusting.
It sure is. But there is something the government should be putting into full force, and I'll bet you a $100 bill, 90% of your non-smokers are drinkers. Now, I'm not a drinker, but I'm not going to say, oh, you can't drink, that's not nice. It affects your liver, your heart, your blood vessels, your spleen, let alone going out and kill somebody. I can have a cigarette and know that if I get in my car, I'm not going to go and kill someone.
Yes, drinking like smoking is something children should not do. They'll have to wait till they get to the age of consent and become adults. What worries me about some of the anti-smoking campaigns, and I suspect some of the anti-drinking campaigns, is that the more you turn smoking and drinking into a kind of forbidden fruit, the more a lot of young people, rebellious people, will actually want to try and show their independence by taking it up in the first place. So we've got to be very careful with associating the anti-smoking message with government, with authority, with teachers and parents and so on.
Sorry, I clipped her by accident, but one more segment. This is quite good. We haven't got many fanatical non-smokers. Only one woman. I think we're tapping the smokers of the world.
We're winning.
I think we've lost the battle, Stephen.
Not the battle for freedom of choice. I wouldn't care if nobody smoked. I wouldn't care if everybody smoked.
If somebody passes a law, I'll obey the law.
Agreed, and I'm working to change the law to ensure that there are fairer laws which treat smokers and non-smokers equally.
After the break. Stephen Eyres is the director of Forest, Freedom Fighters for Smokers. Is that right?
Yes.
It won't come to violence, so will it?
I hope not. There are some anti-smokers, I think you'll call them fresh air fascists, who will adopt almost any device to stop people smoking. I think the argument can be approached rationally, with both sides putting their point of view and letting people decide for and against.
Well, that's a great one for me to use in restaurants. When somebody looks at me sideways, I'll say, fresh air fascists all around me.
Yeah,
that would annoy people, wouldn't it?
Well, it depends where you're sitting. I'm all in favour of restaurant owners satisfying the wishes of both groups of people. And if there's a demand for no smoking tables or no smoking restaurant or a vegetarian restaurant or fish restaurant, then let it be supplied. Live and let live.
Let's have FAF sections in restaurants. FAF. Fresh air fascist sections.
They're the sort of people who tend not to go out to eat anyway.
They're mean.
They eat all brand, drink Perrier water and do aerobics all day.
and then get knocked down by a bus. Go ahead, please.
Well, I just want to say, after listening to all this, that you're still ignoring the fact that smoking kills. I just buried my mother-in-law, who didn't smoke a day in her life. She died from lung cancer, and my father-in-law has smoked all his life. Smoking kills. It isn't a figment of any researcher's imagination.
I don't think anybody underestimates that there are risks from smoking, and those risks are very widely perceived. Every time you buy a packet of cigarettes or see an advertisement for tobacco, there is the health warning. The public are informed. Heavens above, if they haven't heard about the risks of smoking for the last 10 years, they must have been walking around with cotton wool in their ears. Nevertheless, they do identify positive benefits, enjoyments, relaxation from smoking. In a free society, you decide, not the state.
Not the ones who suffer the risks all the time. Everyone around them suffers.
No, that's not true.
It is true.
Smoking can be unpleasant in enclosed areas, which is why
cancer to the other people who are breathing in this.
That just hasn't been established. The American Cancer Society did a huge study on this and can find no evidence that so-called passive smoking causes physical damage to the non-smoker. Of course, yes, it can be unpleasant and annoying.
And now there's been a number of studies that have shown it has.
Yes, it would be dishonest.
Contradictory, but I mean, you can't ignore the fact that there's a great possibility, and most doctors and reasonable people will realize that it does cause cancer to the unfortunate bystanders of your poisonous habits.
No, one of the latest
trying to smoke in your own homes, your own cars, that's your own business.
One of the latest studies.
Should be smoking out public, polluting my air.
Yes, that's all emotional, crude and biased. If you look at it more soberly, you can't yet find, if you ever could find, direct evidence of smoke harming the health of the normal, healthy non-smoker.
But thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Hello?
Yep.
Is that me?
That's you.
Oh, I hate being called a fascist by that gentleman from England. I was in the war 4 years and I hate being called a fascist.
Don't be silly. You're taking it far too seriously. I said fresh air fascist.
Oh, but just recently, I'm the director of TopCat, the organization to protect children against tobacco. He stated that us non-smokers organizations get funds from the government. We get 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And on your way out from Vancouver, don't fly over my house. I've got the world's largest non-smoking sign, 12 foot big. Just recently, I've been campaigning at 4 municipal halls to get a bylaw to ban smoking. At Delta the other week, I told the councillors that the vents in the ceiling of the council hall was oozing with yellow, stinky, rotten substance from the tobacco fumes.
This is in Delta Council chamber?
Yes, sir.
Disgusting.
And the council roared with laughter because I said their building is worse than the Royal City. I've also been at the Royal City. Recently, we had a bylaw in Richmond to ban smoking. Smoking is a dirty, filthy, stinking habit.
Agreed.
I can't find enough words in the Webster dictionary or the Oxford dictionary or any dictionary you like to describe the filthy, dirty, rotten.
Take a breath.
I can't find enough words, Jack.
Take a breath. Take a breath.
It's out of this world. And him saying that we get funded by the government, we get 0, 0, 0.
What's the name of your organization?
TopCat.
What?
TopCat.
Spell it.
The organization to protect children against tobacco.
Yes, I'm afraid you people...
TopCat.
Yeah, TopCat, yeah.
That's enough. He'll be there forever.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I'm wondering where people's senses of humor have gone. You know, I have been told by my husband, I adore him, I shouldn't smoke. That's very true. But, you know, the word should drives me up the wall. I'm the same age as Sophia Loren. I should look like her, you know, but I don't. I'm an Eyres. I should have as much money as you, Webster, but I don't. I took English L&L in school. I should be able to write magnificently with piss, and on I don't. So see this bloody word should? I know I shouldn't smoke, but I do. Take my cigarette away from me and I'll show you terrorism. I mean, I don't know. Oh, let's laugh about it. I am fully cognizant of all the attendant horrors. And I do consider other people. I don't smoke in bed. My husband wouldn't allow it anyway. I don't smoke in his car because, of course, the confines are rather small. But give me a bloody break, okay? Bye-bye.
Quite right. There are too many thou shalt nots in Canada and in Britain. If the antis get their way, Vancouver will end up like Moscow's Red Square with smoking banned completely, even in the open air.
Take away my cigarettes and I'll give you terrorism. That's what she said. She's magnificent. She's terrific, even if she is. I know she's not overweight. Never heard her before, have we? That's a new one. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I agree with you 100% on what you're doing, except maybe you should have it, if you don't smoke, don't, but if you do, you have a right. And I just want to make one point that there is nothing worse than a reformed smoker.
Hear, hear.
Okay?
Thank you very much. And my thanks, how much time we got? My thanks to Stephen Forrest of the Organization for the Right, Stephen Eyres of Forrest. Anything I can do to help your cause? Stop smoking?
Be a good, courteous smoker.
I shall try to be, and I shall remember what that woman says. Take away my cigarettes, and I'll show you terrorism. Thank you very much, Stephen. A delightful guest this morning. Now we're going to go to a dramatic story. A woman who lives in Vancouver here, Helene Moszkiewiez, after the break. This book would make James Bond books sick. This is the most incredibly dramatic book of a true life story of a petite woman who was 20 in 1939 and was living in Belgium at the time, and who did probably one of the most dangerous things that could be done in those horror years between 1939 and 1945. She risked her life, infiltrated, if you can believe it, the Gestapo, and thereafter was involved in some hair-raising incidents, which would normally, you know, you might see one, or you might know somebody once in your life who had done this kind of thing even once. Helene Moszkiewiez, what a life you led in these years, 1939, I suppose, till 1945. How did you feel when it was all over?
Empty.
Empty. Did you ever think for a moment that you'd finish up as a spy?
Oh, no.
A British agent,
no,
really?
No.
And
never.
as a person who would indulge in violence for the sake of a cause?
No, I wasn't a violent person at all.
Where are we going to start? Tell us, before we'll build up to it, but tell me, when it was all over, were you accused of being a collaborateur?
No, never, because they could prove that I wasn't. But once I escaped it in the street with a man who watched me in the Gestapo, who lived across the street, and he saw me on the street, and that was a very close call for me.
Tell me how you actually infiltrated, got into the Gestapo through your association with, was it France?
Well, it so happened that France was supposed to have a better job as a German, for the British. And he was working in the church, and he has written lots of letters, because he knew French, to be able to work for the Gestapo or the Abwehr, the German intelligence service. But he never received any reply. He just couldn't enter there. So they decided that I should try to introduce him to the Gestapo, being young and knowing German, so he can produce better work for the British. So it was arranged that one morning I should go to a certain cafe, which the Gestapo chief and his adjutant always had the coffee in the morning. They didn't know. They thought it's going to take weeks or months before they will notice me. And they asked me to go there morning after morning, always sitting more or less at the same table, so they can notice me. Well, that morning I went in, and there was a little table not far away from their place, and I was always looking by the door to see if someone comes in, as I was waiting for someone to come in. And finally, I could hear the younger one, that was Schwanger, saying to the Müller, "Oh, look, that little one, you know, I wouldn't mind, you know, little things like that." And finally, I smiled. Well, I didn't smile to please them. I smiled to make them understand that I understood what they were saying. So he said, "Oh, my God, she must understand German. Let's find out." And before I knew, he was on my table. I was terrorized because it went all so fast. I didn't expect it to go so fast. And he said, "Do you understand German?" In German, of course. And I said, "Of course, I'm German." "Oh, you are German. Are you waiting for someone?" I said, "Yes, that someone is not coming. I better leave." "Oh, no. We want you on our table. Why don't you come and sit with us?" This is the way I met him.
And that was the way you were recruited
Yes.
into the Gestapo?
No, because you see, my so-called fiancé was accepted to work in the Gestapo. And then a little after that, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks after that, I walked in the street and suddenly a car stopped next to me. I glanced and I saw a Gestapo car. And I said, "Goodbye, world. That's the end with me." And there was a fellow inside who said, "Fräulein Olga, you know, Miss Olga, and how are you?" There was a Gestapo chief. Oh.
You thought when that Gestapo car stopped beside you that what was going to happen with you was what happened to many other Jews in Belgium at the time.
That's right.
Arrested and gone. In fact, what happened to your mother and father?
They never came back. They were deported.
And your husband?
My first husband, too.
To whom you had been married for a week?
That's right.
You see, many people watching the program will say, "Well, why doesn't Webster explain what happened?" Well, in Brussels and occupied Europe, Jews were methodically searched out, stripped of their possessions, taken to Germany and gassed.
That's right.
Or worked in prison camps. Now, that day in the cafe when you met Schwanke,
And Müller, yes.
And Müller. Schwanke was number 2 in the Gestapo. What did you eventually do to Schwanke?
I killed him. I knifed him.
How many years later was that?
3 years, 2.5 years later when I started.
He was number 2 in the Gestapo, and I remember the piece in the book so clearly when you knifed him. You had been ordered to eliminate
That's
him.
right. It was him or us.
By whom?
I was ordered by the resistance, and you know that because he started putting his nose too deep in our story, and sooner or later he would have found out something about France, and that would have finished me too.
Now this was near the end of your career.
Yes, not so much at the end.
Well, getting towards.
Yes, that's right.
Later into the war, and you were in the woods with him.
That's right.
You took your knife and you stuck it into him. You were afraid at the time when you came out. Someone was waiting to get you away from there.
Yes, that was Franz. He was in the car. I didn't remember where he parked the car. I had panic. I was covered with blood, completely covered with blood.
And at that time, you didn't know whether he was alive or dead.
No, of course not. I should have checked it, but I wanted to get out of there so fast as possible.
Of course you did.
You see, he
How
wanted
old were
me
you
to
then? You were.
I must have been 21, going to 22.
What was it that Schwanke wanted from you at that time?
Well, he, you see, I don't know if he believed me that I had a heart condition, but he wanted me to go and see their doctor to find out really what was the matter with me, because he wanted me to, provide more work, to work, full time, which I said I cannot do because of my condition. I know now, 40 years later, why all this happened. It's quite a story, even 40 years later. I found out a year ago why they became a little suspicious. Because when that pilot came to kill them all, what I found out just a year ago, that there was another spy working in the same Gestapo, a German high-rank Gestapist, pure German, who worked for the British. And he was killed in that raid.
Now, you're talking about the raid where the Belgian officer bombed.
That's right. Well, it wasn't really bombed. It was with a machine gun, you see. Yeah.
The Gestapo headquarters in Brussels.
There were at least 100 dead when he finished. And he didn't even know what happened inside. I was there, you see. And there was apparently another spy. You see, the British never wanted that building to be touched. because there were spies working there. He didn't know that, you see, that pilot. And he took that order from himself. He disobeyed the orders, and he came and did that. And he killed one of the best agents the British ever had.
Do you think it's safe for you to be kind of seen in public still to this day?
Yes. Well, it's 40 years later. There's still some lunatics walking the streets. Of course, there's always a danger. It's a danger for everyone. You know, it doesn't matter. Why would who's going to hate me for it? It was the war.
Yeah, well, I know.
You know, it was the war. We all wanted to survive. That's
More with Helene Moszkiewiez, inside the Gestapo after the break. Helene Moszkiewiez, the Gestapo has an image worldwide of being, in those days of the war, of being terribly efficient, terribly well trained, terribly intelligent. Was that the case?
Absolutely not. Lots of them didn't even know how to write their own names. They were dropouts, most of them, or jailbirds. You know, these were the people.
They were good at one thing.
Killing, that's all.
What about the time, though, when you were told by Mueller, who was the head of the Gestapo, this would be before you killed Schwanke, you were told by Mueller to write a warning letter to all Jews in Brussels. What was that?
To write? Mueller?
No.
No. That was...
to prepare a list?
Yes, that list was for the people who there were people. No, Mueller never asked me that. You must be mistaken.
Confused.
No,
you tell confused. The story anyway about the warning.
No. The warning letter was to publish in the newspaper that anyone who will hide a Jew will be deported or killed, and also there was another note saying that anyone who knows where a Jew is hiding, that they can collect money by coming to the Gestapo. That was the note I had to write for him in French to put in the newspaper, which I had to do. So lots of people, of course, came to collect money. And of course, I had to pay them. That was my job to do, but I kept all their names. And they all went through after the war. That was my fun. See, I had the names of it. They didn't know that. But one was a little too greedy. He came too often. Well, that one, we cut his neck.
Good.
He said that was it. The others, they came. It's a question of money. People are money hungry. They all did it for money.
Once that note was in the paper, Belgians would come and turn in where the new Jews were hiding and collect a blood money on them.
That's right. That was blood money. Exactly the word.
But one man did it too often.
Oh, yes. His face was there too much, so that one we eliminated. I didn't do it. The resistance did.
Now, there was another man whom you were involved in attempting to eliminate, who was Jewish himself and who you regarded as a traitor.
That was Jacques.
Jacques. Tell me about Jacques.
Well, Jacques was arrested with all his family, wife and children, and he offered his services to the German to catch other Jews for his freedom. The wife and children were deported. I don't know if they came back. That I don't know. And so the Gestapo hired him. I don't know how he could recognize really Jews, because one day he walked in with a man. I will never forget that man. He was a tall, blond, with a nose up and blue eyes. He looked more like a Norwegian or something. He was a Jew, and he recognized him in the street. Don't ask me how. He was in the Gestapo car, and he just pointed out, here's a Jew and there's a Jew, and then in the Gestapo car and to the Gestapo.
Now, you decided to take action against this man, did you not?
Because he, another day I walked in the Gestapo to take the elevator, and here Jacques was, there, and he came to me and he said, "Come with me, you are Jewish." And I said, "What? I'm Jewish? You dirty, lousy Jew, to insult me as a Jew." And I yelled so much. Finally, Gestapist came down. I don't know. And he said to him, "What happened?" And I said, "Look, he is insulting me. Me, a German, to be a Jew. Do you realize what a lousy Jew that is?" And he said to Jacques, "How can you do that? I know it from Germany. I never saw him in my life. Because I worked for the chief, so, he was convinced I was German." And he insulted Jacques. And Jacques went away grumbling. She's a Jew. She's a Jew. I'm just wondering.
But then, carry on with the story. You are, of course, Jewish. You spoke German because of an accident of fate.
Yes.
Your mother was German.
No. They both lived in Germany before the war, a long time. I came to Brussels when I was about 2 years old, but we spoke German at home. You know, like people keep on their language. This is how I knew German, you see. Very good German, apparently.
But by turning the tables on Jacques and giving him the kind of Jewish insult,
yes.
he was insulting.
Well, he didn't believe anyway. He was sure I was Jewish. He was right.
But you were very nervous about this guy.
Oh,
so what
absolutely.
happened? So
well,
what happened?
We decided that happened, and it shouldn't happen anymore. We decided to eliminate him. So here it was my job again to follow him. So with a wig and glasses. I didn't know where he was living. We didn't know. He took a few buses to come home. Finally, you know, that's a long story to tell, I found out where he lives. So we decided that, you know, we're going to kill him. So Franz had a mission, and one day, as he was wanting to walk in, Franz shot him at least 7 times. So he dropped on the floor. We were sure he was dead, but he wasn't dead. They took him in the hospital, took out every bullet, and the fellow was still alive. Do you realize that? Well, some people like that don't die. And he walked all the time with that raincoat and the bullet hole in it.
He kept his raincoat with the bullet holes in it.
He wasn't right there anyway. But that's the way really was. And the fella, you know, we couldn't do anything anymore because they changed, you know, he changed the room.
Now, you were actually working for Mueller, the head of the Gestapo.
That's right, the chief, the Gestapo
But
chief.
you took a lot of time off sick, didn't you, for your other reasons?
Well, I was a volunteer there, and the reason I wasn't paid, I had the freedom to come when I wanted. You see, I worked for my so-called fiancé. A few hours, you know, he did a few hours there.
But you had trouble getting enough food to eat.
Oh, I was always hungry. I'm still now upset with food. I cook, and I cook. My husband said, you can just feed the whole army. I just cook too much. I'm upset with food.
Well, how efficient was the resistance as such? The stories you tell show a fair amount of efficiency. But I sometimes wonder, did everything go reasonably smoothly? For instance, you helped people to escape from Belgium, did you not?
Oh, yes.
Through France and back to England.
Switzerland, yes.
How were your communications, or did you only hear through France? F-R-A-N-Z, that is not France.
Yes, you mean to take them over there?
Yeah,
by
to
car?
take them over there, and the instructions you received from time to
the
time.
instruction, yes, came from the resistance, you see. And it was quite dangerous too, because sometimes we had to wait a long time to get a truck, you know, to drive them. And then you had to pass, you know, this checkpoint, which was very dangerous. But you see, being there with them, there was a woman, that was me. I joked with the German guards and all this, you know. That made all the difference. Then, you know, we just could pass by. It was always a danger.
And you're so tiny, too.
Well, that doesn't mean anything, you know.
Oh, no, it certainly doesn't. You
the small people sometimes are the most dangerous ones.
Yeah, it took you... how long you lived in Canada now?
32 years.
32 years. You came out, you know, not long after the war. And you've been working on the book just recently?
We really started working on it. My husband is the ghostwriter, you see, and we worked together on it. I wrote it in French, and he translated it to English. Say 8 years ago, I started it, and then when he retired, he translated it for me.
What happens now when you go back to Brussels?
Well, I've been back many years ago. I don't like it anymore. First, it's not the Brussels I knew. It's quite different, you know. It's like every city changes.
Well, I sure hope, I know your book will go well. It's really...
I hope for the publisher.
And for you too. And it's also, you know, it's a record of your highly dangerous life.
Yes, yes, I know.
Now you can waken up in the morning knowing you don't have to kill anyone today and no one's going to kill you.
No, that's right. But I hope this will not happen anymore, that people should be wide awake.
A wonderful book with Helene Moszkiewiez, A Jewish Woman's Secret War, Inside the Gestapo. I'll be back. Do you want to take some phone calls?
Yes, sure, why not?
Let's go to the phones with Helene Moszkiewiez after the break. Couple of other things you must tell me, Helene Moszkiewiez. Franz was your connection. You were Franz's, quote, girlfriend, right?
Right?
And he was in the Gestapo headquarters working for the Gestapo.
That's right.
What happened to Franz after the war?
Well, I don't want to tell that because I will give away the book. I will give away the most beautiful story. That's the last end. I cannot do that. Sorry, Jacques.
Yes, that's quite an
If I say it, then they know the whole story.
Yeah.
So I cannot do that.
One other thing you can tell me about that. When you were warning people, Jewish people, to get away, to get out, or to stay in hidings,
yes,
did they listen to you?
Unfortunately, not all of them, no, because you see, they were Belgian Jews, and they were supposed to be protected there. I mean, they were the Germans. The Gestapo promised the Queen Elizabeth from Belgium that they're not going to touch the Belgian Jews. So they just believed that, and unfortunately, you know, the Gestapo said a Jew is a Jew, regardless if it's from Belgium or anything. We're going to arrest him. So when I found out this, you know, our duty was to warn them, to save themselves. And they could save themselves because they all were very wealthy Jews. They could have saved. They didn't believe me. Most of them didn't believe me. And they were all arrested the next morning.
At that time, they could have got away.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The one who went away, they were saved. If they made it through the war, this I don't know. But that moment, they were saved, yes.
Those who left at that time and vanished towards... what was the safest way to go in those days?
There was not. If you had money, you could hide by paying, you know, going to farms and stay there the rest, not going out. You could do that. And even there was always that danger. But it was a question of having money. With money, you could do everything.
Even in wartime?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Especially wartime.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm really interested in this lady's book, and I'm going to read it at the first opportunity possible. I spent about a year living in Belgium, in Braine-l'Alleud, Nivelles, and Bois-sur-Seigneur-Isaac. And I was told there was a village near there where the Flemish people had collaborated with the Germans and turned in all the Jewish people in the area. And at the end of the war, the French people went through and slaughtered all the people.
Oh, I don't know. Do you know about that?
No. No, I'm not aware of that. They were traitors, there was the Rexists, but they were not all Flemish, they were Walloons, it was a mixture of it. No, no.
What did they call them in Belgium?
Pardon?
What did they call the sympathizers and collaborators?
Well,
there was a political leader of some...
Yes, it was De Grelle.
De Grelle. Leon De Grelle.
Leon De Grelle. It wasn't so bad than in France. Absolutely not. The French were absolutely awful.
Different.
Oh, awful. Not different.
Go ahead, please. From Vernon.
Good morning, Helene. Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I'm a young woman, and I'm listening to your program here, and I really enjoy it. And I just have one thing to say. It's really a comment on her book, and that is that my mother was in the war, and she recounted to me the horror stories that went on there. And listening to Helene talk about the job that she had, at first, when I was listening to her, I felt really angry that she had a job and that she was fortunate enough not to be discovered as a Jew and to be working and not to be sent to the camps or eventually to death. And then after listening to her tell some of those stories from her point of view, I have to admire her for having the courage to do something so dangerous, knowing that, you know, she just wasn't risking the lives of the people she was trying to get out or, you know, to just get them away from the Germans, but in risking her own life too. And I just have to say, for those people who say that the Holocaust never existed, it did, and, you know, I'm only 25, and I never, ever hope to ever experience anything like that.
This is one of the reasons I like to put people like Helene and the other woman I had on, Isabella Letner, because there are whole generations of people in their 40s and 50s who have no conception of the horrors of the German occupation of Europe during the war.
That's right.
Isn't that correct?
Absolutely right.
That's right. You know, I mean, I only have, you know, my elders to go by what they have said. You know, and it's nice to know, like, there was that fellow back in Alberta that's trying to say that it never, ever existed. I know that it did. I mean, she's proof that it did, and she's proof that, you know, hopefully it will never, ever happen again.
You had a very slippery relationship in the Gestapo headquarters. It was Franz. We won't carry on about Franz, but Franz was, he was the bait. You were the bait to get Franz into Gestapo.
Mm-hmm.
Franz got into Gestapo. You worked with Franz all through the war years. He was your direct contact with them, and yet, and because of you were accepted as a German. And they didn't then do any checks back in your background in Europe at all?
No. I had authentic German papers.
When did your mother and father go?
In 42, 43, I think
42, 43.
Yeah.
Did you have time to warn them at all?
No. Well, there was nothing to warn. They knew the danger it was in. They came to pick them up on a Friday. I was at work at the moment. There was always that danger. There was nothing to warn. I didn't know if the Gestapo was going to come, what's going to happen. What was there to warn?
Were you able to get much good information out of Gestapo headquarters for the resistance? Apart from the time you stole all the revolvers.
Yes, that was a good one.
Tell me about that.
That was Hitler's birthday, right? Is that what you want to do? Hitler's birthday. And it was a great birthday. I remember especially eating a lot. Yes. There was all kind of food there. And food I didn't even know before the war. It was all there. And I didn't stop eating and eating. I thought I'm going to collapse. I just started eating. And so we hired, there was a big party, and 8 of the resistance, who were waiters, came there to offer their job. You see, they needed it. And the reason, they went there is to steal some guns, try to steal some guns, which we needed very badly. And so finally, the guns, the party was finished, and when they went to take, their belt and the gun was missing. We knew, what is going to happen, so we were very, Franz and I, we knew going to be very calm about it. So the Gestapo chief said, "Oh, I want everybody checked." It was a hotel upstairs. No one moved. Everybody checked. So finally, they couldn't find anything, and so they wanted to see all the waiters. And the owner, the restaurant owner, counted the waiters, and there were, of course, a few missing. So how did they disappear? There were guards on the front everywhere. They went away to the basement, the back basement. They took a few liquors with them, 2 bottles.
A few bottles of booze with them.
And you see, then they realized that, the lock was broken. It stood there, that they escaped. And Miller said, "Oh, well, we will get them. Oh, we will get them." Of course, I never did. I was a big thing, but that was a good one. I like that one.
It's a great book. And I thank you for coming this morning, Helene Moszkiewiez.
Thank you.
Inside the Gestapo. You're not doing any autographings.
You want?
You're not going to...
No, I refuse to do that. I'm TV and radio shows and newspaper interviews, but not signing. I don't want to be in contact with the people. I never know what a nut could do.
Right. My thanks to Helene Moszkiewiez. So free for all after the break. Yeah, if there's the slightest chance of getting beaten, Premier Bennett can't chance an election in the spring of next year. Otherwise, Skelly might be the Premier for Expo. I'm just saying that as a crossing thought. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Good morning. That's you.
Morning, Jack.
Morning.
Yeah, I'd like to know about Sioux Forest products. How long, why it took IWA.
I think you've got your sound up. McClellan insists that the Sioux Forest Products deal can still be alive. We started out in that story some time ago, and then we kind of lost track of it. I did. The news covered it the other night.
Yeah, but it took IWA so long to get in there.
No, the IWA were willing to put up some millions of dollars. I think it was $8 million. The problem was the money they needed from the BC Development Council. I would like to have seen it go, and who knows, there might be a chance that it'll go yet, because there are 250 jobs at stake in that.
No, I'm one of them.
Are you one of them?
Yeah.
What has Terry Smith told you anything today?
No, I'm just waiting for word from somebody.
It's technically still alive, and it would be a shame to see that Lamford cedar plant.
I'd like to see you get somebody on there again for about the Sioux thing.
Maybe we will. Maybe we'll bring somebody on tomorrow.
Again.
Maybe we'll bring somebody on tomorrow morning about the Sioux Forest Products.
Thanks a lot, Jack.
But I've been concentrating on Lyle Island, and I shouldn't have lost sight of Sioux. I'll speak to Terry Smith today.
Maybe get McClellan on there or somebody like that.
I wouldn't get anything from McClellan. That's the trouble with Social Credit cabinet ministers. All they do is, generally speaking, is evade the question.
Get Bennett himself.
Well, Bennett might well be available one of these days, but I hope he's right when he says that we're around the corner, but I don't see it happening just yet, much as I'd like to be able to say I did. But thanks for your call. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. Webster, this is Bill Farrell. About that smoking?
Yeah.
Yeah, I smoked for 33 years, and then I went and had acupuncture. And after I had the acupuncture, I never had any urge for tobacco at all. I just quit right, boom, just like that.
I'll try it today. I've tried it before. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack. It's a very interesting show this morning. I was quite interested in what the... I just caught the last few minutes. I never realized the lady's name.
Helene Moszkiewiez.
Miss Moszkiewiez. She brought up a very important points regarding the Holocaust. But what we don't see nowadays, I think, is the Jewish people being vocal enough. I mean, I myself, I'm only 26 years old, and it's very on rare occasions do I actually hear much about the Holocaust. And
I don't think you can blame the Jewish people for that, old boy.
well, they don't want to talk about it, and I can see why. But they've, history, it can repeat itself unless, we're told to remember that this is never to happen again, or it should never happen again. It's going to happen again.
As somebody once said, eternal vigilance is the price of freedom, or the price of freedom is eternal vigilance.
This is true.
But there's a whole generations behind me who don't know anything about the causes or the effects of the Second World War, which was the staging ground, apart from Vietnam, for we hope not the Third World War. But thanks for your call, old boy. Much obliged. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. Webster.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment about your first guest. I tried to get to earlier today. And that one woman that phoned in, and she was screaming about her rights to freedom and non-smoking, right? Well, I'm an ex-non-smoker, and what makes me laugh is she's probably one of these type of women that drives a car around that spews out carbon dioxide. That's okay, but smoking isn't. Now, I'll just hang up and listen to your comments.
Thank you very much. Listen to my comments. She's an ex-non-smoker. She means an ex-smoker whose car spews out carbon dioxide, which probably does as much damage to everybody's lungs as smoking does to mine. Where is Rock Creek? Where is Rock Creek?
It's east of the Okanagan.
Nice to meet you, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack, I would like to see you raise at some future time when you have someone from the MHR the question of foster children who are in Vancouver, especially those ones who are on the streets. You remember you were talking about how they are picked up and an hour later they're right back where they were. And I would like you to pursue the fact that there are foster homes in the outside Vancouver, good, experienced foster homes which are not being used. The answer I have had from the ministry is that a city kid would perhaps be unhappy on a farm or in a rural area. My answer to that is, has it been tried?
How about you? Do you run a foster home?
I do have 3 foster children on a free home placement basis, not, under the Ministry of Human Resources.
Well, that would seem to me, there must be, however, for some of these youngsters from the prostitution racket, there's got to be a place really of some kind of confinement, because by the time they get off Robson or Davie or 2nd Avenue, they're pretty well ill-disciplined, and you'll have to put them somewhere where they can be supervised 24 hours a day.
Certainly. But the policy of the ministry is not to remove them from their city or wherever they happen to be.
Well, I think Grace McCarthy could be talked into experimenting with a couple in a place like yours. Have you put it up to her?
No, but on our... we did discuss it. Our Foster Parents Association did discuss it. I'm talking about 3 or 4 years ago, perhaps even longer, with a supervisor concerning this, and he said he would be dead against it on a basis that it would make his child care figures look, with too many imports, as he called them, make his child care figures.
Well, that's no valid reason at all. I think that we must have a special place for these youngsters where they can be physically confined for some time. And then perhaps when they're introduced to that kind of life, they could go to places like yours. But it's a proposition well worth considering, and I'll raise it with McCarthy the next time I see her. Go ahead from Salmon Arm.
Yes, Jack. I would like to make a comment on your first guest. I've been a smoker for about 13 years, and I used to work in a sawmill in northern B.C.
Can you do it in 30
When we had our break, we were allowed to go to the washroom once in a 2-hour period. The smokers that went to the washroom and lit up and had a quick puff were not there any longer than the non-smokers.
A good point, but I've got to go. I'm right out of time, I'm afraid, for Salmon Arm, and I shall be back after the break. Jack of all trades, master of none is how the phrase goes, but a fellow called J.V. Klein, who used to be a Supreme Court judge and used to run Mac and Blow, is going to tell us some of his busy life. He's done everything in BC, has old J.V. Klein. Talking to him tomorrow morning, and we're going to take a look at the Squamish pulp mill, one which depends on chips and logs from TFL 24 to some extent, at 9 a.m. precisely.
British Columbia Television, this month celebrating 25 years of broadcasting for British Columbians.